Before our trip to Montana, I had no idea how pristine land could be. When I pictured wilderness in my mind, I still thought of fire roads and cabins in that image. I thought that every corner of the nation had been developed to some extent. So when I saw the land so undisturbed, I felt the desire to keep it that way. Also, hearing Mike talk about the heavy impact of constructing roads made me understand the value of maintaining the land's integrity from an environmental perspective. Something that I learned from Kyle and Katie, and also some of the readings that we did, is the Native American perspective on the relationship between humans and land. Um, would call it a philosophy, but it's more than a philosophy because it's been practiced and proven over thousands of years, and the results are really impressive. They maintained really pristine land while still developing their own human society. Before Montana, I knew that Native Americans lived off the land, but I didn't know how much care they put into thinking about their place on the land and how to properly give back and pay attention to the land. The listening to the forest reading really showcased that how much he thought about every single plant and their role in the overall forest community. I also gained a new perspective on fire policy. Before Montana, I only thought that fire was bad, just bad. Um, but I learned about in the Big Burn and also in Montana, I learned how it's actually healthy for the forest. So now I think that inside wilderness areas where there's not human residents around, I think fires should be allowed to burn with a good fire management plan. But as they get closer to human residents, there should be a low tolerance for fires because they're dangerous. Instead, I think logging, selective cuts, not clear cuts, but logging, I think, is an interesting alternative because it thins out the forest while adding value to the local economy. As for the political status of the Great Burn proposed wilderness, I think it should be designated as wilderness by the federal government because it's already managed pretty much as wilderness, so designating it would not change a whole lot. Um, but the benefits of changing it would be huge. It would protect the wilderness area from a policy change that could make it not managed the way it is now. It would really just kind of set in stone its current way of management, which is really beneficial for the forest. I believe the Great Burn should be managed as one complete bioregion rather than splitting it off into different districts and states. The reason why we have states in the first place is because each local area needs its own local government aware of its own unique needs rather than having some federal government look over it, some distant federal government. And the same should apply for wilderness. By its definition, a bioregion has its own unique needs, and it should be managed that way by one governing body over the whole thing rather than separate government bodies whose policies aren't consistent. I believe rural economies like Mineral County and Wilderness can exist because there's still so much land around the wilderness that could be used for the resource dependent industries like logging and mining. We saw at Idaho Forest Group that they were able to find so many trees and so much forest outside of the Great Burn area. In addition, as housing prices in urban centers like San Francisco and even Missoula continue to rise, I think we could see a reverse trend of ruralization, where people go to the country in rural areas because the land is cheaper there, there's natural beauty, there's a slower pace of life, all of these things that you can't find in the city. I think this could also cause more non-resource dependent industries to grow in these areas like Mineral County, and also bring more tourism to these areas. In conclusion, I think that the Great Burn Recommended Wilderness is in a really good place right now in terms of its condition and its policy, and designating it as wilderness would preserve that policy and its condition without hurting the local economy because it's already managed as a wilderness area.